joining us. I was a part of the panel discussion which you were a part of, and it was a privilege to hear you speak. So I have a few questions based on the same. Number one would be, you spoke about a very quintessential relation which is lacking in our country, that is between an academy and an institution. What are we missing out on just by not having it? What is it that we can gain from having one, as examples from other countries?
Yes, what we really lack is we want to do the research ourselves. Now we need to learn from countries who have already been quite successful. And if you take typically a country like China, you go to any company, they will have a tie-up, a collaboration with some university where they do a lot of research along with that academic institution, and they may not get a ready-made technology, but they get a lot of inputs, which is lacking in our case. So I think that we are really missing out on utilizing the talent which is already available in many of our institutions. I don't think our students or our universities are any worse compared to China, but the advantages which they are able to get, we are just kind of leaving it on the table. And unless we utilize all the resources at hand, it is very difficult for us to compete with those countries and beat them at their own game. So this is something which I would strongly urge the industry that all of us should do that. The other thing is that there are a number of industry bodies. Now if you look at, let's say, West, for example, to do audits, to do sustainability audits, they have industry platforms where they have really meaningful sharing of knowledge, and they don't, everyone does not do the same thing themselves. So they have a consortium. So if one company approves one vendor, then the others would automatically approve it. Whereas in India, that industry cooperation is lacking. So these are the kind of things which the industry must come up with if we are to succeed in the long term in this field.
Fair enough. So what role can the big daddies, if it's fair to say, what role can the big daddies of the government play to bring about this relation into force?
I think the onus is more on the industry rather than the government. The onus is more on the industry as well as the academic institutions. Because typically academic institution cannot say that my business is education and I am not for the industry, because today unfortunately we see a lot of graduates from many colleges, some of them reputed colleges, who are not really ready to be industry, to join an industry. So when a person joins an industry, then we again have to start from the basic training. So if the industry and the academic institutions, or even institutions like NCL, if they cooperate with each other, the government really, we cannot shift the onus of everything onto the government. We need to take responsibility for that ourselves.
My next question to you, Mr. Gadre, is our, fair to say, an unfair advantage when it comes to a low labor cost, which is actually not culminating into a superior advantage at the end of it, or as an output. What is it that we're not focusing on, or what is it that we're not looking at, which is making this difference in spite of having this advantage?
No doubt that the labor cost in India today is cheaper than many countries, but if we have to look at the medium or the long term, a low labor cost cannot be advantage for any country in the long term. For example, China had a low cost, then India had a low cost. We found that countries like Bangladesh and Indonesia and Vietnam are taking away that business. So we cannot build a model on the basis of low labor cost. We don't want our labor to be underpaid. We don't want to exploit the labor. So the right way to look at things is how can we improve the productivity and the skills of our people, because that's a sustainable competitive advantage. That's good for the industry, that's good for the society. So rather than seeing how my wage cost will be low, we should shift the focus to how my labor cost per unit of production is low. So though I may pay high salary, if the productivity is good, then that's something which we all need to aim for, and not complain about increase in daily wage rate and so on.
Right. Right. And my last question to you, sir. We are looking at a substantial amount of time that is required for investors to be patient in expecting returns when it comes to investing in research and development within this industry. If there is a first-time investor, someone who's investing, who's been an investor just for the past 1 to 5 years, what message do you have to share to them to explain to them the importance of research and development?
This is a slightly tricky question, because it is good for R&D person or for the industry to say that the investors should be patient, but finally the investor is putting his money. So he's taking a risk. So obviously he needs to have, we need to provide him some comfort that everything is going on track. So rather than, look at 0% or 100%, we need to break the problem. We need to say, okay, let's have stages that within 6 months I'll be able to, demonstrate this. Within next 1 year I'll be able to demonstrate this. And then if things are going on track, then we can expect that the investor will be patient with us. If we tell him that at the end of 3 years, you ask me what is happening, don't ask me any questions in between. And then obviously, the investor would feel at the end of 3rd year, if I say the project is a failure, then, he loses his money. So we need to, define stages and how we'll measure whether things are going right at various stages. So for example, initially we might start with lab experiments, then we might go to pilot plant, then we might go to, a full scale plant. So depending on the product, we need to have time bound targets, because whatever industry might say, no investor is going to put in his money and take a chance on something which may or may not happen. So we need to be fair to the investors. If he feels that at some point of time we are not able to, we are not on track, then he needs to, have an option to exit.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us.
Most welcome.